This is Patrick from WSOU 89.5 FM, the loudest rock, here today with Melissa Cross. How you doing today?
I'm fine. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, thank you for taking the time. So you're a heavy metal vocal coach for people who might not know you. You've worked with so many incredible vocalists, I can barely even begin to list them all. But the first thing I want to start with, I work at WSOU. A lot of my friends are here, but a lot of my friends and family are outside of the station, outside of the world of metal. And I show them the music we play, and a lot of times their first reaction when they hear metal screaming is, "Man, doesn't that hurt?" And I say, "No," and that's your job, right?
Well, it used to hurt before I came around. I think that's how I got the job. And I don't know, I guess I'll just say it's very interesting how things fall into your lap if you just stop trying so hard. A friend of mine this was in the late 90s, like around 98, 99. He was recording bands in his basement. And the bands, these were unsigned bands. This was 1999. This is Connecticut, you know. This is a bunch of Connecticore bands. And one singer from Rhode Island and a band from Massachusetts called Kill Switch Engage. So and he had a bunch of other bands, and he said, "I want to bring this singer in because I can't." He's just coughing blood. I mean, you're a voice teacher; you can figure this out. I said, "Okay." So now it wasn't the first time I'd heard it because I saw Slayer and I saw Megadeth, so I kind of had an idea of what this was, but I hadn't seen it up close. So I took the challenge. I took a couple of weeks to figure it out, how to do that sound in a healthy way, because I'd already been a voice teacher for a long time. So, I mean, 10 years, right? So I figured it out and I taught him. It was Jesse Leach. And then they got signed, and then everybody got, lined up because that our community, I like to say our community, I'm much older, but I still think of myself as a metal person. Our community talks a lot to each other. You're a metal kid, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So it's a village, right? You're my
Right.
brother. So word gets around, and then they just lined up. So then it became all of them, Slipknot, Lamb of God, and we're still talking early 2000s. That's before you were born, right?
I was 2001, so probably like
Oh,
around that
so
time. Yeah.
close. So I just realized, I am ancient, dude. My perspective is a little bit different, but anyway, that's how it happened. I think the story is that, my whole life, one of my first idols when I was younger was Janis Joplin. So I had already been working on that raspy sound. That was like my life's mystery, is how to get that chaotic sound of voice without actually doing road rage. It was my sort of, and when I finally figured it out, I was past, recording, material, right? But I knew a lot about it, and I used that. And so it was just being prepared at the right time.
Absolutely. And I've heard you say that a big mistake that a lot of metal vocalists make is their reaction to the music is usually aggressive and angry, like it is for pretty much anyone who listens to the music. And in that aggression and angry feeling, you end up kind of straining your voice. So the key to metal singing is to actually relax, which I thought was kind of surprising. So like, can you talk about like how you might be at a show watching a singer look like he's in terrible pain up on stage, but he's actually quite relaxed?
Yeah, it's the face. I always say it.
Yeah.
It's the face that makes the difference, but it's just the face, and it's not. Anyway, I'm just going to ask you something, right? Are you a screamer, by the way?
No, I'm not. I don't sing.
Okay, so if you tried to scream right on stage, right, the only thing you would recall is when you actually do that, when you actually lose control. But that can't be sustainable, every night and even
Right.
for 3 hours, right? So you have to learn another way to make that sound, and then you have to put that in the sincerity of it. Like, in other words, it's a little bit technical to learn it, but it's nothing like rage. That is the thing that you have to disassociate completely to learn it, just to learn it. And then once you learn it really well, then you can go out there and it's almost like a great actor. You just wear it. You just, it's like a sport, but it's not really a sport. But it's all about like voice production. Any kind of voice production is a balance of air pressure and vocal fold closure. And if one of those, factors gets out of control, like it's too breathy, then it's not, doesn't work. If it's too right, too constricted, everything is balanced. So you got to get those sounds, and those sounds are just high frequencies. Like that's a high frequency. That sounds like I just, imitated a like some kind of like sound effect. So you got to think of it as sound effects and not metal screaming, not rage, not brutality. You can't think of it with all those characters. You have to reframe it and then put it back in.
Of course. And something else you said about screaming is that the scream doesn't define the genre, which is also kind of the opposite of things that I've heard from metal fans, not musicians, but metal fans over the years. So
the reason that you heard that is because it used to be like that. I swear, in the early, when it was a small thing, like this is a big industry now. When I started in the late 90s, this was like weekend gigs, with people driving around in their, Mazdas or, using, it wasn't buses, it wasn't it was some vans, right? Vans, yes, but it was really lo-fi, So this is such a different thing than what it was. And back then were little clubs. So there was a death metal scream. And that was like most of the records that came, Sweden and, Northern Europe, right, had a certain black metal sound to it. And that is like that, or even the, that thing, right? That's, that people heard that and they think, oh, Norway, Sweden, but then you had like American ones like, kind of screamo kind of thing. There were different tribes, and the tribes had fans. So there were straight edge bands. You ever heard what a straight edge band is? Straight edge is no drugs.
Yeah.
No, I mean, straight edge is, but the straight edge kids were kind of like militant about it. So, didn't have that sort of, nice, warm and fuzzy PETA vegan thing all the time. It was just like they would cause riots. So there were all these like crazy little, it was it's always about rebellion. But at that time, there were different manifestations of rebellion. They didn't always fight each other, but they definitely showed differences in the music. Now it's not like that. Now, right. Well, maybe it is like that. Yes, it kind of is. Because, isn't it like, don't you think that metal has like an underground all the time?
Oh, yeah.
It's not like metal was underground and now it's not underground. Metal has always been here ever since they invented the electric guitar. This is like the kind of evolution of this, but it's not like, it used to be underground and now it's big, because all forms of music I've seen, they all, the commercialism of music like takes elements of the underground constantly. This has been going on since I was, I've been a music kid since I was 7. So and now I'm 67. So I can see how, elements kind of flourish like this. So anyway, I forgot why I was talking about that.
We're talking about
anyway,
how
it was the
screams,
tribal. It was the tribal nature of, oh, well, that's a death, or that's a a black metal band. Well, that's a math, that's math metal. That's for sugar. Oh, there were these little tribes like, oh, this is art metal. That's like Pelican, right? And this is like they had these little, and they had a lot of independent labels that represented those factions. So you get a certain kind of band that come from a certain kind of little indie label that had 3 people working there that wore different. They all wore different hats.
Right.
The president was in the mailroom.
Yeah. So since we're no longer in the days of the scream defining a genre, how do you work with a vocalist to find their own voice while also kind of pulling from their influences on a record?
Well, I think it's about understanding overall for any kind of professional vocals. To be excellent, you have to be a, a forward, independent kind of thinker. You have to take risks. And taking risks is like putting down like the safety net of trying to please people and sound good. Now, in order to do that, first of all, you have to have the ability to be completely naked, vulnerable, which is scary because most people, a lot of people who want to do this, they want to do it so that people will like them. But the thing that makes them do that is the thing that like sort of, cancels it.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to where we was. To find your own voice is to understand the control of your voice. So instead of learning how to scream, I would want to tell you how to track, you know, 5K in the back of your head, or how do you get like a, say, a warmer sound, like what vowel makes that, you would sort of look at the essence of what the voice is instead of the inference of what it is. So you get down to a something that you understand in your body that you can repeat, because when you learn something, in order for it to stay there, you have to be able to remember it and repeat it, right? It has to stick into your body. And a lot of rock singers are in their heads. They hear something that they learned a long time ago and they try to imitate it, but it never works because there's no steering wheels neurologically that allows your body to kinesthetically like produce a sound and imitate it at the same time. Ta-da!
Kind of building off of that, you said some people, they take things that they think they know and they kind of put it into practice. Something I thought was interesting, looking back through some of your old interviews and videos, is that you're very much against singing from your diaphragm, which is something, even though I'm not a singer, is something I was usually told about how you should sing. I interviewed Bruce Dickinson recently, and I asked like, oh, what do you do to like, take care of your voice? He goes, well, sing from my diaphragm. And I'm like, really? I thought Melissa Cross said not to do that.
Okay, all right, okay. There is a semantics issue, and I haven't had time to address it because I've been so busy. All right. I did not say do not use your diaphragm. Your diaphragm knows how to be used. You don't have to use it. It is something that you cannot even feel. What people are thinking their diaphragm is a bunch of intercostal muscles, and to think of them as pushing out sound is not helpful, because especially since we have microphones. Okay. So that pushy, high pressure singing, that was opera. That is opera. Opera doesn't use microphones. Okay. But we have microphones, right? So if I didn't have a microphone, I wouldn't be able to do the screams that I do, because part of it is the interaction of the frequencies coming out of my mouth. Yes, it's not nearly as loud as it infers. As an audience member, you hear that and it has an inference, right? But it doesn't have that inference to be produced. So for instance, I'm on a microphone now. I'm going to make a sound that is close to the volume of my speaking. And I want you to notice how much louder it sounds when I go, yeah. Sounds loud, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it's not. It's not loud in this room. But that sound has so much high end in it. It has 5, 8K. I mean, you can see it on a spectrogram, right? Those frequencies are louder to humans. We don't hear all frequencies the same volume. The higher ones are the louder ones, just like the ambulance, the police cars. They are what they are. They're louder because you are more sensitive to them. The sound carries faster from a shorter distance. I mean, from a longer distance, whatever. Anyway, if I could go, down a wormhole here, but the fact is that I don't teach people how to make the sound. I teach them what they have I teach them what the sound is and teach them what they have to get there, so I can get them to lose the inference of all the extra stuff that doesn't matter. And then you can put the face on, and then you could, do the thing and be it and do it. But you have to get rid of the associations to learn it sustainably. It doesn't take very long though. And it's a bunch of fun. It's like kindergarten, my class, because it's all a bunch of sound effects.
Right. Okay. Can you think of a specific singer that you've worked with who came in and was all about association and imitation and kind of left
All of
with their
them.
own voice?
I can I can actually pinpoint the ones that weren't, right.
Right.
There Corey Taylor was I think Corey Taylor just had that. It just has. I don't know if it. I saw him after he'd had so much experience and everything, but that voice was a part of him. There was no artifice or affectation. There was no. But sometimes singers they get under stressful situations and they lose sleep and they get sick. And then if you're on that kind of touring situation, and you're sleep deprived and you're sick, anybody will get injury. And so that's when I had Corey Taylor, by the way, is that when he got into but when I got to him, I taught him a couple of things that helped a lot. Like he was already, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't really teach talent.
Right.
No, but talented people have bad habits, so I'm the one that sort of figured it out, like how to get rid of that bad habits.
Right. And I actually talked to Corey about this, about how vocalists like him, Jesse Leach, and then later Howard Jones, kind of they were screamers and clean singers, and
Correct.
it created this sort of dynamic where now you see bands that have a designated screamer and a designated clean singer. How do you think those two different textures kind of work to serve the song?
I used to call that good cop, bad cop vocals. Okay. And it happens less now than it used to. Especially, I'll give you an example. There's a band called Treyu,
Right.
and Brandon's on drums. He's like the clean singer, and then there was like another screamer. But then the screamer, they parted ways, and then Porter learned how to scream, and then Porter can sing, and Brandon learned how to scream. I mean, yeah, scream, yeah. So now they both do both, and it's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing how people think that screaming is going to rip up your voice. So therefore, I cannot sing and scream at the same time. There are many, many lead singers that used to scream that got a screamer because they couldn't cut it. So I say, if the music's good, I don't care. Who am I to judge? I mean, I would say good cop, bad cop. I mean, that's just being so catty. There's been some really good, really, really good cop, bad cop bands. I can tell you one that I absolutely love is Dance Gavin Dance. Right. So I taught John Mess, and that guy, that singer, I would love to teach him to scream, but I don't think he should scream because his voice is so angelic, so angelic. Like I shouldn't say good cop, bad cop, and be catty like that, because that is Crown the Empire used to do the same thing. Issues. Like there's a bunch of bands that what was it called? We Came as Romans had that. Like it's been a tradition, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it's not. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. That it should be done because of the creative thing, not because of taking care of the lead singer who can't scream.
Absolutely. And you just said a lot of people are afraid to scream because they might damage their voice, but
Correct.
people who do it wrong will. And a lot of people come to you in emergency situations. So, we've talked about what you do to teach people to scream, but like what do you do when someone comes to you and they're all hoarse and they can barely talk to recover? What does the recovery process look like?
Well, first of all, there's no learning in that part.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing is that they have to understand what vocal rest is. And once they do it the first time, they never doubt it again. But it's hard because, I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy to go through uh, 12 hours without speaking and writing notes. And it takes discipline, but it works like magic. And people want to take drugs and sprays and buy this and buy that. Just shut the F up. The tissue, well, okay, so what happens is that when you're hoarse and then you do another show, then you're twice as hoarse. So it
Mhm.
takes twice as long. Just like how badly did you sprain your ankle? Well, that's how the recovery time works. And then once the thing starts to get, there's exercises that could be done while we break the vocal rest, and we sort of coddle it back to a kind of placement and understanding where hopefully that doesn't happen again. So my training starts with the speaking voice, not with singing, because the kind of music that we're doing, we are not, quote, singing, end quote, right? We're not doing that. We are telling a story. However, we're using notes, and that's where the challenge is. But the honesty of telling the story in the voice has to be there. And then I have to teach people first how to tell the story. I use above the pencil. Like I'll give you an example. Right now I'm speaking above the pencil because that's the
Mhm.
way I usually speak, because it feels right. Like, and I am in touch with whether it's actual or not, I believe it, and it's in my imagination, and everybody's voice is connected to their imagination. So I feel my voice above my hands here. Now I'm going to feel my voice below my hands, and I want you to, I haven't done it yet, but when I do it, I'll do this, right? But now maybe no, I won't do that because I want you to see if you can see it. Okay, I want you to see
Uh-huh.
if you can see it because I know what I'm doing. Okay, right
Okay.
now I'm speaking above the pencil. Now I didn't change the pitch, but now I'm below the pencil. I didn't change the volume either, but now I'm above the pencil. Do you hear the difference? Now all I'm doing is switching something. I'm below the pencil now, but I didn't change the pitch. I just changed the placement. Okay, now that is tricky, right? Because there's no neural steering wheels that I can operate to do that. However, my imagination does it. And
Mhm.
that is the magic of the voice, is that all you have to do is think red, and your voice is red. You don't have to learn how to do this. You have to learn how to get out of the way.
Right. I read about the above and below the pencil thing, and I tried it because that's your profile picture too, is biting down on a pencil. And I was like, I wonder what above and below means. I'm like, okay, that kind of like that
You
makes
felt it,
sense. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, you feel it. And so now
And
I'm a little more conscious about it.
yeah, exactly. And just the remembering of the sensation works the voice.
Hmm.
You don't need to move muscles to work your voice. You just need to understand, have some experience with what does what. And it's very fat. I mean, it's really magic because it requires being present in your body, not being present in your mind of, I want to be a rock star, right? But when I am above the pencil, which is for everybody who's listening who wants to try on their own, because I want everybody to have fun here. When you go, yee, right? That when you make that sound and you put your hands between your top lip and your nose, and you think of the how it almost that yee, yee, it feels like, excuse me, it seems like if I could see sound, it would be coming out from behind my eyes and making gold particles all around. And that helps my larynx position. Has nothing, I didn't do anything with my larynx. But when I go, yeep, 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 my vocal folds stretch, my vocal tract doesn't change, but my vocal folds stretch more. And I am in a light vocal form. I'm not going, but I'm not operating it from my vocal folds because that's for my imagination to do.
Of course. And you do have online vocal classes and lessons available. And I've heard you say that people, not only singers, can take things away from your lessons. What's something that an average person can take away from vocal lessons, even if they're not a singer?
Well, first of all, once you get above the pencil placement in your speaking voice, if you like my speaking voice when I'm speaking to you like this, then you should take my class. Because if you talk like this, it's not very pleasant to listen to. And people won't do what you say. But if you speak like this, you might get it done. There's
Yeah.
that. There's public speaking. There's actors. There's voice actors. How to put together a voice reel. And then the classes start with speaking, but it goes into singing. So it's how to make your singing voice not a singing. It's how to make yourself come through your voice by feeling who you are, like sensually.
I do know, at least at WSOU, a lot of times when we go to a concert and we're yelling because we're fans, the next day we're like, oh God, I got a DJ. No way.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And I guarantee you will not lose your voice if you take my speak course. You will never lose your voice because I teach you what people call diaphragm.
Hmm.
But it is a misnomer to think of it as your stomach. There's something that you can do with your rib cage that leaves your stomach alone. Now, I didn't make this up. Dude, this is like the difference between Italian opera and German opera. The Wagner people were the rib cage people. The more, Puccini type operas in the Italian school, they're like the belly things, but it's not. In the middle 1800s, they didn't have machines that could show people that their diaphragm was not their stomach. And they never dropped because it worked for some people a long time ago when people would sing together with instruments. The instruments would be louder than their voices. So the only way that they could sing above the instruments was to yell like that, right? Because they didn't understand these things. So beautiful singing was developed so that when people sang, especially to the king or whatever, that they didn't sound that obnoxious, but they figured out this kind of different placement that you could sing, and you could also hear the voice over the clamor, just like you can hear an opera singer over an orchestra because of the high frequencies. Right? There's a lot of high frequency in there. When the orchestra is playing, it doesn't compete. I mean, it competes and it wins because you can hear it. That's the same thing that I use with screaming with a microphone. You don't actually have to scream it. You can use the high frequencies that early opera technique people figured out. That if you don't yell and you use the shape of your vocal tract, the shape of the open spaces in your head to make the thing louder perceptually, right? Then you can have a lot of freedom to put a lot more nuance in it, right? So that's what I wanted to tell you, a story.
That's cool. And we're running low on time, so I got one more question. You just talked about nuance, and a lot of people who I show the station to, they know Metallica and they know Korn and Deftones and bands like that, but their reaction to a lot of the stuff we play is, I like the music, I just can't get into the screaming. What's something you could say about screaming that might make people hear it in a different way, even if it might sound a little unpleasant, to just kind of appreciate it a little bit more?
Well, the thing at the basis of rock, any kind of rock, is rebellion. And this screaming thing was a cathartic experience of people who had all of that stuff that you get when you're like younger and nobody likes you and you're not accepted and everybody thinks you're a dweeb, or like it's that oh, terminal loneliness. We are the good people. Like, we talk about how we feel. And so some people want to use music to feel like calm down. But this music actually calms down people who feel that way because they can join in. So you don't have to like it. I mean, if you know, and you don't. There's different kinds of metal. There's active rock, which has a little bit of screaming, but maybe you want symphonic metal, or maybe you don't like metal at all. Maybe you have like some kind of issue and you want to hear the, I don't know, just like you don't have to like it, but it saves people's lives, this stuff. We're all about saving each other. We're all about taking care of one another. We are ambassadors to good people. And that is what metal is to me.
Very well put. Well, Melissa, thank you so much for doing this. Where can we find you on social media? Because you do post some really cool stuff.
Oh, okay. So my Instagram is Zen of Screaming. And that's also like, I don't know, like somebody helps me with it and they put it on TikTok and whatever.
Mhm.
I'm so I just like film it and then somebody like does what they do, right? And
Yeah.
I'm just really overwhelmed with, it's like delighted that people are liking the stuff that I'm doing now because I love it. I'm having fun. So also the classes, melissacross.com. Right now, these classes are really cheap. They used to be almost $400. Now they're less than 200. And it's 13 hours. And it's got all the exercises in every range. And you can email if you have a question, blah, blah, blah. I'm not doing live classes for a little while, but I'll get back to it soon. So, you know what? I got to say one more thing.
Okay.
I listened to WSOU in the early 80s. And it was the coolest thing because every day before my day job as a secretary, I would hear these like sci-fi books read on WSOU. It was addictive. I was always late for work listening to you. Anyway, thank you so much for having me. I've been listening. I have a bumper sticker on my car.
Nice.
SOU.
All right. Thank you so much, Melissa. This is Patrick, WSOU 89.5.